Hi, everybody. Hello there. I am so glad to see a full house, not only because of what we're... Would everybody please sit down? I'm Lorraine Zamora, president of 3 Parks. And I'm glad not only because we always love to have a full house, and I think we're flowing tonight, but also because you saw the new time. You're here at 7:30. I was so afraid we'd be here with an empty room until 8 o'clock. This is something new we're trying, to start our meetings at 7:30. I wish I could say it has nothing to do with our ages, but it does. And I hope it works out for you. I hope it works out for us. Just let me see. How many of you like the idea of a 7:30 start time? How many of you would prefer to keep it at 8? Yay! Okay. I want to... Last night we had some people writing postcards to get out the vote. And it was up on 110th Street and Amsterdam or Columbus? Morningside Heights. You know what last night was. It was awful out there. And 14 people came. Bless all your hearts. 14 people showed up to write those boring postcards. But they work. It really worked, and it's fun to do it together. Okay. Before we start, I do want to remind you that, what's today? A week from Sunday, January 21st. A week from Sunday, we are having our New Year's holiday party. So we're still celebrating New Year's, don't forget. And so put it on your calendar, the 21st from 3 to 5. It's a Sunday afternoon at 102nd at Broadway at a restaurant called Street Taco. And it's our treat. It's our New Year's treat to the membership. So we'll have great tacos, margaritas, guacamole, all the good stuff. So we really hope that you come and join us. Okay. So tonight, we are in what we call the endorsement mode. Tonight is our first night of endorsing candidates that we want to be on the ballot in November. And we're starting the process tonight, and that's by which 3 Parks, I want to read this because I don't want to trip over myself. We're starting the process by which 3 Parks will be hearing candidates that are running for local and state offices in this year's elections, and then deciding whom we want to endorse. We'll hear from candidates at one meeting and vote to endorse them at the following meeting. So let me run that through you. There are going to be 4 such meetings. It's on. Okay. Tonight is January 10th. So we are going to hear from candidates for the New York State Assembly campaigning to succeed Danny O'Donnell. And you will be hearing from Micah Lasher, Eli Northrup, Melissa Rosenberg, and Barry Weinberg. Their bios, you're going to be hearing more about them, but their bios are on our website, 3parksdems.org, and in the January newsletter. And you can go back and read all those bios between now and the next meeting. So, you will be endorsing them on February 14th. On February 14th, you will be hearing from candidates for the New York State Districts 30 and 47. The state committee, district leader, the female district leader, and the 3 Parks membership director. and you will vote to endorse your candidate the weekend after, on February 21st. On February 21st, you will be hearing from candidates for civil court judge and judicial delegates, and you will be voting to endorse them on March 13th. Are you keeping up? You keeping up with all of this? Then on March 13th, there will be candidates for the 23-24 Board of Directors of 3 parks, and you will endorse them on the same night, and then the endorsement process will be over. Also, on each of these nights, we'll be hearing from club members wishing to express their support for a particular candidate. You had your hand up, Mary?
Yes. What about Congress, which is up this year as well? And
We heard her. I don't have the answer, but I heard you. Where's Dan? Answer the lady's question. What about congressional candidates this year?
We're definitely going to have at least 2 congressional candidates. If there are challengers, then we will have them as well. At the moment, I'm unaware of any challengers to the 2 incumbent Congress members, Jerry Nadler and Adriano Espaillat. Yeah, Mary. We don't have lines yet, although that's true, Mary. The likelihood is that they're unlikely to alter the lines in Manhattan. The potential for entering any changes to the lines is likely to be in Westchester and Long Island, where they will have a greater impact. So it's unlikely there'll be any changes to the districts that would impact us. That's what I hear. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Just as a reminder, in order to be able to vote to endorse, you've got to be a member in good standing of the club. So if you have not paid for dues this year, before the end of the meeting, march down over to the table and give Teresa your dues so you can endorse. It varies. What is it, 25 for a member, 40 for a family? Teresa? Hello, Teresa. What are the dues? 25 and 40? Okay, here we go. So tonight we're hearing from 4 candidates for the Newark Assembly. Each will have a total of 15 minutes to speak and to receive some questions from you. We're going to be keeping pretty strict timing tonight because we have 4 speakers. And we're starting early, but I don't want to end late. If we start early, we'd like to end early. And Corinne is here. Stand up, Christine. Christine. Let them see the signs we don't want to be disrespectful to our candidates' remarks, but we have to let them see these signs. Okay. As far as the questions are concerned, I am going to ask you to show some restraint as well. 1 minute per question, please. No 5-minute background and opinion and then ask your question. No. 1 question, 1 minute for your question. Keep it simple. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, so we are now starting with Micah Lasher. And Micah is Director of Policy for Governor Kathy Hochul right now. Pardon?
You were assigned tonight, right, bro?
Could you just wait?
Sorry, I'm just thinking.
It's all going to unfold.
I was making sure.
Don't worry. You may recall, some of you will remember Micah because he ran for the state Senate several years ago. And we endorsed him in that campaign, and we were very disappointed that he didn't win it. I'm sure he was too. But now he's Director of Policy for the governor, but he wants to come back to serve the city. So Micah?
Thank you, Hi, good evening, Three Parks. It is really wonderful to be here. I drove back from Albany today. We had the governor's State of the State address yesterday. I am operating on about 5 hours of sleep from the last 7 days. But I really wanted to be here with you when the news of Assemblymember O'Donnell's decision not to run for re-election came out. I very much thought I wanted to run for the seat, but needed to complete my work in government leading up to this day. And then when I found out that the forum was going to be here the next night, I said there was nothing that was going to stop me from being here. So as a result, today was my last day in the governor's office because I wanted to be here with you tonight. And though I'm not ready to make a formal announcement, I'm here because I'm planning to run for Assemblymember O'Donnell's seat. And there would be nothing that would give me greater honor than to have the support of this amazing group of organizers and activists. I know many of you from our work together in 2016 when I was, winning 3 parks and campaigning with you was just unbelievable wind at my back. I got to know many of you even better 2 years later when we worked together to help Robert Jackson defeat the IDC candidate that I had lost to, because that was so important to create the change we needed in Albany. I also see a lot of new faces, folks that I hope will become new friends. And for you, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in this neighborhood. My mom's still at 103rd Street. I'm raising 3 kids. We're on 92nd Street. We play in the same playgrounds that I grew up in. I love this neighborhood. I consider myself a West Side patriot, and I feel like it has given me so much and has informed a sort of sense of an obligation to give back. And as a result, I spent the better part of my career in government. I got my start working as a community representative for Jerry Nadler, doing the critical, not high-profile work of helping people get what they need from government, whether that's a postal delivery box in a place where there isn't one, or security cameras in a NYCHA development, the little things that we need our elected officials to help people with. And I learned that from a leader who was great at that, just as he was great on fighting on national issues of importance. I went on to other roles of greater significance in city and state government. I was Director of State Legislative Affairs for the City of New York, fighting for the city's needs in Albany, coordinating an agenda across 50 city agencies, fighting for the city's fair share. I was then Chief of Staff in the State Attorney General's office during a period of time that I think was really a progressive heyday for that office. We took on fossil fuel companies over false disclosures about their stranded assets. We set up the first special prosecutor to investigate police killings. And for the last 2.5 years, I'm skipping parts, but there's a lot more in the letter. For the last 2.5 years, I've been policy director for Governor Hochul, and thinking about all of the various complex challenges facing our state, and very proud to have been involved in indexing the minimum wage and expanding child care eligibility and finally turning the corner on the state's disinvestment in mental health. The next assembly member for this district has 2 big roles that I think they need to play. The first is being an effective representative for this community. That means serving constituents well, dealing with a no problem is too small mentality. That is absolutely critical, because that's the core work of a local elected official. And it also is about being the West Side's voice in Albany, bringing the values that this club holds dear, that our neighborhood holds dear, and bringing that to Albany. The other thing that this assembly member needs to do, because the West Side should be the progressive source of ideas for our state, is to be a leading voice in tackling the thorniest, most difficult, most complex challenges our state is facing, and there are many. And I'll just mention 3 of them. We face an enormous crisis of housing affordability. It is a regional problem, it is a statewide problem, it is a local problem. And it requires an all-of-the-above approach. We need to build, we have what it's doing, by the way, and you all know this, I don't need to tell you this, is it is putting enormous economic pressure on tenants because of a massive shortage of available housing. So there aren't enough homes. People can't find a place to live. That raises prices. The landlords put enormous pressure on tenants, try to push people out. And that is the crisis that we're facing. And to respond to it requires an all-of-the-above approach. We've got to build a lot more housing. We've got to build a lot more below-market housing. We've got to help people who are homeless or on the precipice of homelessness with financial assistance so they can afford housing. And we've got to protect tenants in the homes they have. We have to do it all. There's this debate over, should we do good cause eviction? Should we do housing access vouchers? Should we do more supply? We have to do it all. That's one. And I've been working on those issues since my time in the AG's office when we went after landlords for deregulating apartments and brought apartments back under rent stabilization. One of the first criminal cases successfully brought against a landlord for tenant harassment. And there's no issue more important to this community and to the state and to the economic future of New York. Second, we are facing a mental health crisis in this state. And we have been for a very long time. It's just that the COVID pandemic, I think brought it home for a lot of us. And we need to begin the hard work, and we have begun. And I've been very proud to be part of beginning the hard work of turning the corner of decades of state disinvestment in mental health. We put $1 billion last year, and we've got so much more to do. And if I had the honor of representing this community in the State Assembly, that is work that I would look to continue to do. And lastly, we have a major fight on our hands to protect democracy. We've got to strengthen our democratic systems here in the state, how elections are run, how our government works, and we have to protect our state and our values and our rights and our laws from a right-wing regime in Washington, Supreme Court, hopefully not, but maybe a future president who is determined to take them away. And I was involved in the legislative response to the Dobbs decision and how we protect reproductive freedom in the state from a reactionary Supreme Court. And I was involved in the legislative response to the Bruin decision, which turned our gun safety laws upside down, and we crafted strategic, thoughtful legislation to protect New Yorkers when the Supreme Court was saying, was being reckless in their disregard for our safety. So the next assembly member for this district has an enormous amount to do. I believe I bring to the job some experience and some skills that might enable me to do it effectively. And this club, I know this club is not just an amazing partner in a campaign, but this club is an amazing partner in organizing for change in Albany. And I would be honored to have your support in the campaign, but equally as important, if I'm fortunate enough to represent the district, I would want your partnership and your help delivering on a shared agenda in Albany. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, you're up.
See, Danielle?
We're ready for Q&A.
Sure. Danielle?
Thank you, Micah. Always a pleasure to have you here. There are approximately 80,000 rent-subsidized apartments lying fallow in New York City. We try to warehoused, lying fallow. It would be great if Mayor Adams could force the landlords to make those available. That would put a huge dent in homeless people and the refugees who are pouring into the city. And I'm wondering if in the assembly you could force the mayor to do something about that, please.
Sure. Well, I think that when you think about the issue of vacant apartments, it is not, I think, disconnected or not unlike the issue of the Metro Twin, as an example, or the issue of scaffolding that gets left up for years, or the issue of vacant storefronts. At the end of the day, landlords do what is in their economic self-interest. And what government's job is to do is to put their thumb on the scale for people. And if we want change, we have to change the economics of what it means to keep an apartment vacant, a storefront vacant, what it means to leave scaffolding up for 20 years, what it means to leave the Metro Twin a hollowed out shell. And I know there are people in this room who've worked on all of these issues. And so, Danielle, I think that on each of them, and they're complex. I mean, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But I think on each of these, what we have to do is increase the costs to the folks that are engaging in this bad conduct of continuing to engage in the bad conduct and make it not something that works economically for them to continue doing something that is hostile to the interests of the community.
Hi, I'm Gloria Ann Kirstein. I have lived on West 106th Street since 1982. I'm a senior citizen, and I'm also part of an HDFC co-op we converted 30 years ago. We have here in the district 79 HDFC cooperatives representing over 1,300 households. All were incorporated, most of them in the first generation in the 80s and 90s when nobody wanted to live in our buildings because the landlords had left them in such bad straits and we had high crime rates and low-income tenants. What we're facing in 5 years, and this is my question to you, is the damn tax cap, which has kept us financially afloat because we inherited such terrible buildings that we had to fix. That damn tax cap is expiring in 5 years, and we'd like to know what you would do, Mr. Lasher, to support an extension of that tax cap that can keep us financially alive, keep our maintenance low and affordable, which it is. And I'll have to say, remember, HDFC co-ops are the only housing stock in the entire nation where the majority of homeowners are people of color. So to keep them financially clear, we would need to have that damn tax cap.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for that question. I have to say, in full disclosure, it's a personal issue for me because my sister is in an HDFC co-op on 116th Lenox, and we talk about these issues a fair amount. You know, I think it's important to recognize that HDFCs are they're almost an in concept. They are almost an idyllic version of what we want to do with housing, right? These are communities of residents who came together and blood, sweat, and tears and made viable, cooperative, affordable housing. You know, in the last few years, there's been an enormous rise in a conversation about social housing. HDFCs are social housing, and they've faced enormous challenges. They've faced enormous challenges. And I think that, you know, I guess it's maybe a simple answer, but what government needs to do is help. And, you know, with regard to the damn tax cap, it needs to be reauthorized, and it should be reauthorized without ultimatums, without imposing on HDFCs, you know, the heavy hand that is going to diminish the culture and the work and the quality of housing. And I think government, you know, I don't think government gets great marks for what it has done over the years to make the HDFC project a success. I think HDFCs have succeeded, frankly, in spite of government, and it's not something I think that to write home about. But that can be changed. That can change going forward. And I think what our government needs to do is renew the tax cap and provide help and assistance, not demands and ultimatums.
Yeah, hi. I have a couple of questions related to your biography. I noticed that you mentioned that you worked for the city, but you did not mention that you worked for Mayor Bloomberg and as his chief lobbyist promoted policies that opposed tenant protection, opposed the millionaire's tax, and supported charter schools. You also seem to have omitted the fact that you worked for Students First New York, which is the chief charter school lobby in the state. Now, I would like to know how you square that with calling yourself a progressive Democrat.
Bruce, I appreciated that question when you asked me in 2016, and I appreciate it again this evening. Just to be clear, there's a lot that's not in that biography because I've done a lot. And there were only so many pages I wanted to expend. But let me answer that very directly. I'm incredibly proud of every day I spent working in government. Every day. Jerry Nadler, Mike Bloomberg, my current job, very proud of it. Doesn't mean I've agreed with any of them all the time. Ed Koch used to say, You agree with me 8 out of 10 times, vote for me. Agree with me 10 out of 10 times, see a psychologist. And that's how I felt about all these jobs. I believe in government service. I believe, and I should say, by the way, yes, 11 years ago, I spent 11 months working for a charter school organization and resigned because I wasn't comfortable with it. And I think if you look at what I've done in the 11 years since, as a parent of 3 kids in public school, 1 not presently in public school, but 2 in public school now, as part of the administration that's finally fully funded foundation aid for our public schools, which was the necessary but not sufficient condition to make public education what it should be in this state. I've been part of putting more money into SUNY than the state of New York has done in decades. Just last week, I worked together with the state teachers union on legislation to change the way we teach reading in our schools, because the old way isn't working and we're leaving tons of kids, particularly black and brown kids, behind. So I haven't agreed with what every person I've worked for has believed. You and I wouldn't agree on 10 out of 10 things, but I'm incredibly proud of the work I've done in government. I believe government is the best tool that we've got to right social injustice, to make our society fairer and more equitable. That's why I work in government. That's why I want to continue working in government. That, to me, is what progressive is. I think that's what this club stands for, and that's why I'd be honored to have your support.
We're staying true to our timing. That is 15 minutes on the dot. I thank you, Micah. I thank you for your questions. Our second candidate tonight is Eli Northrup. And Eli is a public defender and policy advocate who spent his career fighting for equality and social justice in New York, and as your policy director for the criminal defense practice at the Bronx Defenders. That's where he is now. And he helps bring fairness and dignity to our criminal legal system. Welcome, Eli.
Thank you, everybody, and it's nice to meet most of you. I don't think I know many people in this room, but I really appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself and to talk a little bit about who I am and my vision for the 69th District. I'm particularly excited to talk to this group. I was looking on Three Parks website, and it said on the website that the club endorses candidates who demonstrate ability and progressive convictions. And I believe that I'm such a candidate. I'm new to politics, but representing people is what I've done for my entire career as a public defender. As Lorraine mentioned, I'm the policy director for the criminal defense practice at the Bronx Defenders, which means I lead a team of advocates. We go up to Albany, we go to city council, and we fight to make the criminal legal system a more just and compassionate place. And for the last 10 years, I have stood next to and fought alongside people facing criminal charges in our city's courts. So I've seen the way that the system treats people who don't have any political power. And I've seen how outcomes in cases are dictated largely by somebody's race or the amount of money that they have in their pocket. And that didn't sit well with me. So about 5 years ago, I started to go up to Albany to advocate for more systemic change. And along with many grassroots organizers and advocates, I've been part of a number of successful campaigns in that respect. I was on the steering committee for the campaign to change our bail laws and reform our bail and discovery laws in New York. I have worked to reduce the population of Rikers Island, which I believe is the largest public health hazard in our city and needs to close. Everybody who spends time in that place comes back to us less stable than they were before. It makes our city a more dangerous place. I worked on the campaign for Clean Slate, which is a law that was passed this past year that expunges past criminal convictions so that people can move on from their criminal history and get jobs and family and jobs and education and contribute to their community. I was instrumental in the campaign to legalize adult use marijuana in New York State with an eye toward repairing past harm done by decades of racially disparate enforcement. So in some sense, I've had a good amount of success as an advocate, but largely what I've seen up in Albany has been frustrating and disappointing, because the same dynamics that I see in the city's criminal court system exist up there. Those with power and money have access and they have influence. And there are many leaders that care more about politics than they do about people. I've seen that. And I have to tell you, it's very frustrating. But for me, it's been motivating. Because I've also seen that when people come together, work across difference in broad coalition, progressive change can happen. And it does happen. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was not born in New York City. I'm from Maryland, Bethesda, outside of Washington, D.C. But I did grow up in a community that shaped the way that I live my life. It was a tight-knit community. And in my neighborhood, the center of that neighborhood was this church. I was raised Jewish, but this church was like a welcoming place for me and my family. My mom would read poems at the services. Me and my sister were invited to the Christmas pageant, and then we would light Hanukkah candles. And my parents, they were part of the Civic League that met in the basement. And what brought people together in my neighborhood, across many other differences, was a sense of community. And that sense of community is something that's instilled in me, and something that I've found in Morningside, in the neighborhood that I currently live in, at my gym, Liberated Fitness, on the pickleball courts in Central Park, and on Riverside, at V&T's, at Bob's Your Uncle. I found the same sense of community in this current neighborhood. My father passed away last year. He was a conservationist. He worked for the Nature Conservancy for 40 years. He cared deeply about the environment and being helpful to others and building community. And I'll tell you, one thing that happens when a parent passes is it makes you take stock and realize you only have so much time if you want to make a difference. That's why I'm taking this leap now. And I'm asking you all to take it with me. I may not have the same political experience as many other people in this room or in this race, but I have a different experience, which I believe is valuable. As a public defender, I am used to encountering difficult situations. I'm used to picking up emergency phone calls in the middle of the night. I'm used to talking families through hard choices. My job requires me to operate with a clear head through extremely stressful and pressure-filled situations. But most of all, it requires empathy, it requires patience, and it requires compassion. And I will use those skills to fight for this community up in Albany. I'll use those skills to advocate, to ensure that we have a New York where people feel recognized, people feel supported, people feel safe, where people can afford health care and they can afford to live, an education system that is worthy of our children, a public education system worthy of our children. I will fight to protect LGBTQ rights and reproductive rights. And I'll focus on more local issues. Anybody who knows me, who's talked to me for more than 20 minutes, has heard me rant about scaffolding or noise pollution or access to public restrooms. I'll fight to protect our community gathering spaces, our parks, which are the infrastructure that really ties communities together, and to ensure that older New Yorkers have a place that they can live and stay and afford and have access to the services they need. These are things I care about. I've lived in this city for 15 years. That might be very new for some of you. For me, it's a long time, and this is my community, but I love this city. I love the energy. I love the enthusiasm. I love the absurdity. I love the grit. But what I really love is that we can all coexist. And I earnestly believe in our ability to do good together. My time's about to be up. I'm asking for your endorsement I guess, on February 14th. I'm not an expert in everything. You all may stand up and ask me questions. You know, I don't know everything about everything. I am an expert in one thing, though, and that's listening. And I know what it means to represent somebody. It means that you keep your word, you show up, and you're reliable. And I will do that for this community. So, thank you.
Let's go on this side of the room. Right there.
Yes.
Hey.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that you would be a champion for criminal justice, but we do have a few other problems. And Mika listed housing as number one. I'd like to know if you are for good cause eviction, right to stay legislation, and increasing the supply of truly affordable housing.
Yes.
How you might approach that.
What's your name?
My name's Renee.
Hi. I'll make it easy. Yes, I'm for good cause eviction law. I would support it. I would co-sponsor it on the first day, and I'd fight to make sure that it's passed. I'm for increasing the supply of truly affordable housing. I'm not an expert in this field. I have talked to many people who are. I would rely on their expertise. I know affordable housing is probably the most important issue facing this city, and obviously this neighborhood as well. So, short answer is yes. And I would work to learn more about it and advocate for it. Yes?
Hi there, nice to meet you, Eli. I'm Dan Cohen, I'm the district leader for this club. The New York Times recently reported that the Bronx Defenders took a strong position on Israel. There was a population that was for it, there was a population that was against it, and there was a population that was for the statement that the Bronx Defenders issued. There was a population against the statement that the Bronx Defenders issued. And then there was a group that sort of, I guess, was neutral. Which group were you in? And can you briefly explain your reasoning on that?
Yeah, it's been a difficult time in my office. I can tell you that. Well, let me just first say, what happened on October 7th was devastating. People are hurting. I have many friends who are hurting. I think that people in Israel deserve to live in peace and in dignity, and every hostage needs to be brought home. I also believe that what's happening right now is unacceptable. There are thousands of innocent people right now who are being killed. If you're asking about my opinion on the issue, it is not the opinion of the Bronx Defender statement. I was not part of a statement by the management or the union. I'm not in the union. I used to be in the union. I'm no longer in the union, nor am I part of the management. So I'm not part of that. What I feel like is very unfortunate about that is we do incredible work every day for the city of New York and for the people that live here, for people that can't afford attorneys. We represent thousands of people each year, and I truly believe in our mission and the work that we do, and my colleagues. I believe in my colleagues. And I would just say that that's what I wish the focus on was with respect to the office that I work in.
Just to be clear, there was a group that was for the statement, a group that was against the statement, and there was a group that was neutral. Which group were you in?
I believe you're referring to the group within the union.
Yes.
And I'm not in the union. So I was not part of, I was not asked to comment on the statement, nor was I asked to be a part of it in any sense, and I still work at the organization.
Okay.
But yes, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Over on this side.
Without the mic. Okay. My question is about education. Our district doesn't really have a specialized high school in this district. I'm talking about schools like Bronx Science, Brooklyn Tech. I'm a graduate of a high school of art and design, okay? And that school provided skills to anybody who didn't go to college and could go out there and get a job. We don't have anything in our district. Would you push for some sort of a school like that for the 69th Assembly District?
That's interesting. Actually, my campaign manager, Simone, who's here, she went to Bronx Science, and I have a number of friends who went to that school and some of the other specialized high schools. I think it's extremely... There you go. We got an alumni event right here. I think it's very important that people have the ability and access to go to a specialized high school. I think it's important that people have that ability and that access. I would, if there was an opportunity to bring a specialized school to this district, obviously I would want to explore it and talk about it. I don't know that much about plans like that. I'd be excited to learn about them. But I do think that it's important that more people have the ability to participate in those special programs because I know how important they are. I've seen friends go through that process and truly benefit from it and have it change their lives.
One more we can fit in.
Israel, all this stuff is very important, but I have a real quality of life thing, scaffolding.
Yes.
And I
Talk to me.
Okay. And I believe that the length of time that scaffolding is up has to do with graft. I'm glad you're shaking your head. It's bizarre. What can you do about it?
Yeah, this is something I'm kind of laughing because my friends tell me to shut up about scaffolding constantly because I'm talking about it. It's an $8 billion industry in New York City. That is wild. $8 billion for scaffolding. I mean, I know that the borough president has, and the mayor have rolled out some local laws that are meant to attack it and actually focus on it. It would be a priority for me, I promise you, because it's not only an eyesore, I believe it's totally built on a lobby that protects itself, graft, like you said. That's the only reason it exists, to sustain the industry that it's created. It does not serve us in the way that it was originally intended to, and that's something that I would certainly focus on as an elected official. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eli. Did Melissa get here yet? Oh, hi, Melissa. Okay, hold 1 second. We're just taking a break for 2 important announcements.
Thanks, folks. As you all know, the Three Parks has adopted the 3rd Congressional District in Nassau and Queens. It's the district that Santos was just thrown out of, and we're doing whatever we can to help the candidacy of Tom Suozzi out there. Now, there are 2 things going on immediately. The first, we're doing postcard writing. We have a list of young voters, young Democrats, who voted in the last presidential election but then skipped the last congressional election when Santos got elected. And so we're sending them postcards just to remind them that this coming election, the special election in February 13th, is as important as the presidential election. A lot of people didn't make it to pick up cards last night because of the storm. You can pick them up at the table in the back when you leave, and you can pick them up tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock at 104th and Broadway. We'll be out at 104th and Broadway every Monday and Thursday through to the first week in February, and you can pick up cards and then bring them back at the next Monday or Thursday. We're also asking for contributions for postage, and I know that postcard writing isn't something that everybody wants to do, but if you don't want to do it, you can adopt a postcard writer. It's like adopting a whale, and all you have to do is put money in the collection can that Lynn has in the back to buy postage stamps. And you buy the postage stamps, and the adopted postcard writer will then write the cards for you. You don't have to exchange photographs, you don't have to show them around when they come to town, you just have to put money in the can.
That is why we love Steve Max.
And, excuse me, I'd like to put in a word also to follow up on what Steve said. We are planning 2 canvassing trips out to the district on Long Island to knock on doors and do everything that we can to turn that district Democratic. So we're going to go out on 2 Sundays, Sunday the 28th of January and Sunday the 4th of February. We're probably going to meet here on the west side, probably at 96th Street, in the morning at around 9 o'clock, and we'll take the Long Island Railroad out to probably New Hyde Park. And it's an easy walk from New Hyde Park to from the station to the campaign headquarters, and they'll take it from there. They'll give us everything that we need to, to knock on the doors and give us scripts to say. And I've already done this a couple times, and it's very rewarding. So by all means, please consider joining us. It's a great way to spend a day, and please come and help. There is in the newsletter, there are places where you can click to RSVP to say that you're coming, and I'll be sending out further e-blasts as the dates get closer and with further details. So let's go canvassing.
We love you too, Chuck. We love you too. Okay, back to our speakers. Melissa Rosenberg, hi, come on up. Melissa's on Manhattan Community Board 7 for the last 7 years, and Melissa is committed to dealing with issues related to housing, NYCHA, and homelessness. Right? Thank you. Welcome.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It's good to see some familiar faces in the crowd since I'm not as used to doing this, but thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Melissa Rosenberg. I'm going to try to keep this briefer, having sat through 7 years of community board meetings. I know a long meeting, so I'd love to get you guys out of here as soon as possible. But to tell you a little bit about myself, my career has really been focused on solving problems and learning new areas of policy. I've spent years working in affordable housing and homelessness, and gun violence prevention, and Jewish culture access, and I really pride myself on entering a new policy realm, becoming an expert, and then applying that knowledge to thoughtful solutions as soon as I can. For my current work, because I think this will come up as a question as soon as we start the Q&A, I do work as a registered lobbyist, but I'll say I view a lobbyist as an advocate, and my values inform my work, and I'm proud that I've spent the last 4 years creating more housing in New York City during a housing crisis. So I look forward to hearing more questions about that nonetheless. I've also spent time in government, which I think everyone should spend some time doing. It's invaluable to see how things work from the inside. To speak to what I'd like to see and how I'd like to serve you all in our district, I think our city is facing enormous challenges. We're seeing rising rents that are really crushing to us. We're seeing folks afraid of losing their housing, especially post-COVID, as arrears have accrued. We're seeing mounting evidence of climate emergency, like yesterday, last night, when we were all afraid to leave our homes, and these issues require action now. And lastly, we're struggling to keep our small businesses open, which I think it's a tragedy every time we hear in the West Side Rag that another business is closed. And I believe the shared goal of everyone in this room is to really increase the vitality of our district and our city. And that vitality comes from our diversity of residents, from our local businesses we stop into every day or every week, and from our streets that are lively and safe, or can be safer. But we cannot just stand by and hope that these things that we like and the change we want to see just happens. We really need to see action. And that's why I'm running for assembly. I really want to take up these fights for street safety, for housing affordability, for quality of life, to end street homelessness. These are the issues that I really feel passionate about. And folks who know me can attest to the fact that housing affordability, housing justice are what really get me fired up and most passionate. And I think it's also amazing that that is the issue that is at the forefront of all of our minds right now. And I think that makes me uniquely suited to help deal with it. Street homelessness, mental health, addiction, educational attainment, these things are all rooted in housing security, housing affordability, and housing justice. So I think it really speaks to the urgency and how this issue affects all of our lives. And it's one, again, that I feel I'm uniquely qualified to take on. I want to earn the support of this club. I really admire your progressive values, and I think I could embody them as your representative in Albany. I just want to say one more time, I really appreciate being here and being given this opportunity, and I look forward to answering all your questions. all willy-nilly.
Thank you. My name is Adafe. I've worked on homelessness in the city too. I just want to ask, in your opinion, what causes street homelessness and how do we go about solving street homelessness concretely, looking at New York City shelter system, and why do we create shelter system? I just want to know.
That's a great question. I mean, I think a lot of street homelessness is tied back to the quality of our shelter system and folks being afraid to seek shelter in it because of conditions that result from crowding, violence, and a lot of it results from lack of mental health care and substance use services. So, I mean, just today I was at, I don't know if you guys know this organization, Broadway Community, up on 114th, and they have an amazing model that focuses on creating respite beds, so beds in houses of worship that can provide wraparound services and really address people, meet people where they're at on an individualized basis. So I would seek to expand these models that work. Safe havens work. Having a street outreach that's intense works. We need to encourage the state and the city to put more resources into what works and use really an evidence-based approach.
And that is investing in the non-profits. Are we investing in Broadway? What's the solution?
Sure, yeah. I think it's the city funding programs that give contracts to nonprofits, but proven models. So safe havens are a proven model. And of course, I only would support these contracts going to proven nonprofits that provide good services. And I think they need to be closely monitored by the city and state that they're doing so. Yeah.
Hi. Oh.
Oh, Madeline.
Hi. I just want to be transparent. Melissa and I were on a community board 7 together. She was housing chair and I was chair for task force for public housing. She knows the things, the issues we are going through, but my question is, not only Douglas houses, citywide, we have been neglected, defunded, and just not thought about. There are programs, people want people to change and talk about the crime-ridden public housing and we should tear it down. I read a lot of blogs. So my question is, how do anybody expect anything to happen when you don't invest in the communities that need it more than others? You have so many in these communities that need you all, but we are not getting that. We haven't for decades. I've lived in Douglas houses. My family has moved in Douglas houses since 1957. I moved out for 4 years and came back. This place went to, can I say that word, F? So I didn't understand it. It took me years, and I'm thankful for Melissa, and as well as Barry, the next candidate coming up. He's on community board, and I just want to be transparent with that too. He and I work together on different public housing issues. So I'm not endorsing anybody today, but I want to know what you all want to do as a candidate to invest in public housing.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Madeline, for the question and the kind words. I mean, the most obvious first answer is pushing for more state and federal resources for public housing. There's extreme needs for capital repairs, and I think when folks feel like their homes aren't being respected, it doesn't breed a feeling of feeling like your city or state or country respects you. And then, you know, next I think something like that you are doing, which is amazing, is youth services that really engage folks when they're young, get them passionate about something, and then keep them focused. I think there's a lot more we could do to make sure services are reaching not only just seniors in NYCHA, but younger people, folks who are underemployed. I think there's a lot of ways that we could work current residents into helping their neighbors in NYCHA, and we could invest more in making sure that happens.
As a member of Community Board 7, I'm sure you have witnessed many tense neighborhood battles over what I would call NIMBYism. And everyone talks about our values on the Upper West Side and our progressive values, and yet we all know that when it comes to the location of a shelter or transitional housing or supportive housing or affordable housing, the knives come out.
And so, what have you learned in your 7 years? What advice can you give us for resolving these fights, really, as a community? People come up with excuses about preserving the quality of life, preserving the historic character of a neighborhood, but I often think they're just proxies for keeping people in need out of the neighborhood.
Thanks for that, Elizabeth, and I couldn't agree more with a lot of what you said. I've watched these fights play out not only on the community board, but in my professional life where I do community relations for folks opening supportive housing and occasionally shelters. And I do think that there's a lot of hiding behind the rhetoric that you mentioned about quality of life, about historic character. But I think a lot of it is really seated in fear of change, which, you know, is legitimate. Like, we all love our neighborhood and we love the environment we've created, and some of that is just fear of the unknown. So, you know, what I've seen work really well, and I don't want to put this burden on these folks, but like folks with lived experience creating relationships, folks who've experienced homelessness, talking to their future neighbors or who are experiencing homelessness, I think bringing more humanity to the conversation can really help break down some of those boundaries. And then I think ultimately it takes a strong advocate and a first person to stand up and say, I don't care if everyone here is going to boo me, I'm going to stand up for this. And that can have a total domino effect and get a second person to stand up and a third. And then you see this silent majorities in the room who actually does support opening our neighborhood to new neighbors.
Hi, my name's Earl Kimmick. I was wondering if you would champion the New York Health Act. You may be familiar with the bill that would make health care universal. All New Yorkers would get quality care. It would cost us all a bunch less, regardless of documentation, employment, or anything.
I would absolutely support it. Basically my whole family is in medicine except me, and the stories that I hear from them about folks who have to seek indigent care or who just avoid seeking care until it's too late and they suffer a worse medical consequence because of their lack of insurance coverage is just really unacceptable, especially in a country that has as much wealth as ours. How are we not investing in universal coverage? And I'll say I lived in Canada, I went to college there, and I got to experience a better way of doing things, and it works, and there's honestly less administrative burden on our providers and opens them up to be able to provide health care, which is what they signed up to do. So yes, I would absolutely support it.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, it's time for Barry Weinberg, who's Vice President of Community Board 7?
9.
I had 9. And I read 7. Go figure. So, you are, I know, Barry's committed to being representing Morningside Heights and Manhattan Valley and the Upper West Side in Albany by a strong progressive voice, and he believes that he can do that, right?
I do.
Let us know why.
All right. Thank you, Lorraine. It's very good to be here at Three Parks. It's good to see so many familiar faces. For those of you who don't know my background, I moved to the West Side 15 years ago when I was 18 years old. I was not lucky enough to grow up here. I grew up in Indiana, and in a place that was very different, and in a place that had very different values in some ways, and I hated it. And one of the things I learned there was that if you don't like something, you have to work and talk to people and mobilize them to change it. And so within, I think, a month of being here in Morningside Heights, at that time, I was involved in the campaign to flip the state Senate in 2008, which we did. We won that battle, and then we quickly lost that war for a while. But I have been active and involved on the West Side for all of the 15 years I've been here. For the past 4 of those years, I have been chair of Manhattan Community Board 9. I have been on that board for 11 years. And in that time, I have spent way more hours than I can count dealing with the very nitty-gritty, on-the-ground, granular rubber meeting the road of the challenges in this community and what it takes to actually unstick every choke point along the way to get a solution to a problem. I have spent much of that time on the Housing, Zoning, and Land Use Committee. And I think that we all know and have all heard about the crushing burden that rising housing costs are placing on everyone, whether it is because they are paying them or whether it is because their landlords have been harassing them because they believe they can make more money by kicking them out, whether it is through HPD's depredations on HDFCs, or whether it is through the city's systematic disinvestment in NYCHA housing along with the state and federal government. Housing is the overwhelming issue of our time, and it is something that I've spent a large amount of my time on. I think that, someone has mentioned an all-of-the-above approach to housing, which sounds good and is factually true, but as a community board member, every time I have heard that, I see that we get the parts of all of the above that benefit large, wealthy developers, and the parts that would actually change things on a wide scale, like in the 30% of this land in the city that is zoned for single-family housing, never seem to actually happen. So one of the things I would like to see Albany do is to pursue a minimum density allowed on residential land. A lot of people have talked about lifting the FAR cap at 12, which would be very, very tall buildings. I want to know why, if you own a piece of property out in Douglaston or Long Island, why you can't build a duplex or a triplex or a mother-in-law unit in the backyard and increase the housing supply in a way that might not make developers money, but that adds housing. I also think that we need to pass good cause eviction now. I think that is a crucial element of keeping people in their homes. And I think in this district, we need to fight to ferret out and bring back into rent stabilization and rent control those units that have been illegally deregulated over the years in this district. And there's a very easy way to do that. If you search for buildings that had J51 tax credits and have fewer rent stabilized units now than they did when they started J51, you have found illegally deregulated units. And so I think that that's something that on a very local level, our elected officials can and should be doing to restore some affordability to our neighborhood. I also think that affordability writ large is eroding our commitment to values that we see in this neighborhood and across the state. People are unhappy because of the rising cost of living and because it's becoming harder and harder to live here. That's low-income people, that's working people, that's middle-class people, and so I think that the affordable housing rehabilitation tax credit that was passed this year in Albany, but I believe has not been adopted by the City Council, is an important step towards helping address some of those costs for both people who own. Landlords are not my favorite group of people because of what they do, but if you can lower your property taxes by making capital repairs and improvements, and you can also do that if you're a co-op board trying to preserve, middle-class housing in this neighborhood, I think that's a very good thing. I think that also, however, I would like to be this neighborhood's progressive voice in Albany for those who need the most care and compassion and defense. I think that something that hasn't been talked about enough is the widespread closure of psychiatric residential treatment facilities, including one that was here in this neighborhood, the August Acorn Center, which closed, which had a track record of operational problems, but this has resulted in massive wait times and kids and adolescents being parked in emergency rooms with mental health crises because there is nowhere for them to go to be stabilized and to receive the treatment they need. And so I think increasing state funding for residential treatment facilities, for psychiatric beds at hospitals, and for community-based mental health care is crucial towards addressing this need in our community and across the state. And I think that, what's not often said are the people who struggle to live in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood has 9 subway stations that serve it. One of them is ADA accessible, and the other 8 are not. And the MTA has a plan that is moving far too slowly to address that. We have, I think, about 10 officially funded NORCs, naturally occurring retirement communities, in this neighborhood, like at Red Oak and at Goddard, and we need to be doing more to make those not just places for socialization and for meals, but to truly include wraparound services to help the elderly who are facing the same problems that we all are, but with fewer resources sometimes. So I want to be not only the progressive legislative voice for this neighborhood in Albany, I want to also be one of the people with a bully pulpit on the ground who can turn to groups like 3 Parks, block associations, the HDFC Coalition, public housing residents associations, and others to actually bring some power and agency and organizing back to this community, to bring people in the room and to help them be part of that solution. That is how changes like the 2019 law improvements get passed, and it's that mobilization and encouragement and organization that makes this neighborhood what it is and has always been in its hotbed of activism and leadership and civic engagement. So I welcome your questions, and I hope to earn your support for Assembly.
Hi. Hi. Ready? Okay. Hi, I'm going to try to do this in a minute. 3 parks won contextual zoning, 96 to 110th Street, more than 15 years ago. This is zoning that has protected our affordable housing from irresponsible development. Community Board 9 has applied for spot upzoning in our neighborhood south of 110th Street between 108th and 110th in order to build 25-story luxury towers with a small amount of affordable housing. 3 Parks is opposed to this plan. Okay, we want affordable housing, 100% if this, okay, would be great, okay, within the confines of our current zoning, which is approximately 15 stories. And we want Community Board 9 to withdraw that part of the plan which is in Board 7 and is in our neighborhood. Would you advocate for this position?
I will say that in my position at Community Board 9, both as chair and currently as vice chair, I strenuously argued against the inclusion of any sites in Community Board 7 in the plan which was drafted by the City Council's Land Use Division. That being said, the contextual rezoning that exists south of 110th Street and north of 125th Street does not exist from 110th to 125th, which is what the bulk of the proposed rezoning does.
No, I know.
Yes, so I would advocate dropping those provisions from CB7 if that is what CB7's position is. What I will say is that the plan in every area where there is an upzoning includes a height cap to discourage luxury super tall developments and to require affordable housing through the city's mandatory inclusionary housing program. I think that it is incumbent upon folks who are involved in paying attention in this neighborhood to work with owners, and I think the sites you're talking about are one-story retail spaces, to make sure that whatever is developed there not only is 100% affordable or contains a significant majority of affordable housing, but also can contribute to improving accessibility at the subway stations in the immediate vicinity, which is what Community Board 9 has been doing with the property owners of a site at 125th Street.
But Board 9 is an applicant, okay, an applicant
Yes.
for this rezoning. So will you advocate Board 9 taking that part that belongs to Board 7 and the 3 Parks area, okay, out of your rezoning plan? And the second question with this, if taller buildings are going to be built, despite our objections to them, okay, 3 Parks is demanding that 50% be affordable. Would you advocate for that position as well?
Absolutely. I would advocate for 100% affordability, and Community Board 9 continues to have the stated position that it is not our attempt or business to rezone anything outside of our borders. That
But
is
it's
the domain of
it's in the
CB7.
application.
We will not rescind the application, considering that it covers 98% of it is in CB9, but we will, not object if the sites in CB7 are removed at the City Council or City Planning Commission level.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Stearns. None of the applicants so far have mentioned the topic of immigration and the new immigrants in the city. So any one of them, I wish was asked, particularly Mr. Lasher, since the governor is in a position to do something about it. But what is your opinion of the policy of the mayor, where he has been evicting families from shelters after 60 days, and they're being forced to relocate, to pull their kids out of school? What is your opinion of that, and how do you feel that the city and the state should handle the problem? And just let me mention that we had Ruth Messenger here a couple months ago who spoke about the mishandling of this whole issue in New York City. Thank you.
I think it is both simultaneously inhumane and completely unproductive, the policy that you referred to of evicting families and forcing them to reapply. I also think that the Callahan decree, from a statewide perspective, which is where the city initially established a right to shelter, really should apply statewide because it was based on, the understanding and the reading of the state constitution. And so I don't think the rest of the state is doing enough to deal with this. That being said, the fastest way to get a family out of a shelter is to find them permanent housing. And I think that that is where the administration should be focusing its efforts. I think that immigrants have always been a boon to this city and, in fact, the lifeblood of this city. Both sides of my family were immigrants to this city. I think that we always need to be mindful of that. And if something isn't working, we need to figure out how to make it work rather than to blame immigrants or to talk as if they're going to end the city, which has come out of the mayor's mouth. So I think that there are investments that we can make in placement. I think that also there are communities upstate that have been losing population that would benefit from immigrants coming there if there can be a way to successfully identify places where they could move permanently and establish themselves. But that is my position. I don't want to take up the whole time. That was only two.
I just want to be fair. Barry and Melissa are very, very close to me, so I just want to give him equal time. I asked about the investing in public housing and the different things that are going on, but however, we're $80 billion in deficit, and no one's lifting the finger to try to find a solution. The residents are blamed for a lot of the destruction, and I'm just going to talk about Douglas houses right now. However, but nobody's doing anything to help us go forward and make it better. There are few residents in Douglas houses want to do better, but we need political support that will do better by all the administrations behind. What kind of money and what kind of things that you would put forward to make it more positive?
So I have 4 parts to that answer. I will try to go through them very quickly. The first is you need money to make fixes to the physical issues in NYCHA. And so I am part of a group that supports what's called the Invest in Our New York package, which is a package of revenue-raising measures that would address some of the extreme inequality in income and wealth in this state and put it towards the issues that need them most. I would advocate for some of that funding to go to public housing to address these. I think that, number 2, NYCHA also needs to have much better management of how it spends money to do repairs. NYCHA, you will have a leak, and you will get wet plaster that grows mold, and NYCHA will cut out the plaster and replace it 4 times before it fixes the leak. And understanding the need to find root cause and address those issues before you then do a surface level fix is something, and the MTA faces the same issue with capital planning, which I won't get into. The second or the third would be to involve the residents, no matter, and it's not just the Residents Association leadership. Residents in the building, whether or not they're in RA leadership, can play a role in finding that solution and in bringing people together. And that goes not just to the state of the buildings, but it goes to services for the young and the elderly, it goes to job placement and training, it goes to addressing other issues that folks have, and Gail Brewer is actually running a very fascinating program with an evaluation component, I think by Fordham, in Amsterdam houses to attempt to bring some of this holistic way of thinking to some of the issues faced by the residents of Amsterdam houses, starting by asking them what they think their issues are and what they need to fix them. And so I would look to that model and its evaluation by Fordham to how I would address it. And then, finally, I think that public housing was, when it opened, some of the highest standard housing in the city. And people had a lot of pride in that. And I think it was a deliberate decision by Republicans in Congress in the 1990s to starve public housing of financing so that it deteriorated and so that people would hate it. And that is exactly what has happened over 30 years. So it is not all NYCHA's fault. And I think that addressing that and bringing back some of that pride, will also address some of the issues facing public housing. Thank you. I'm getting the hook, I think, but.
Thank you. Thank you, Micah, Eli, Melissa, and Barry. It was an extraordinary array of candidates that we listened to tonight, and I thank you for coming. And we vote next. We vote to endorse at our next meeting on February 14th. Valentine's Day, we're voting to endorse you guys. Okay, do we have a district leader report?
Very briefly. So, as many of you know, I wear multiple hats, and I'm pleased to announce that, as I had promised at the end of last year, that I'm stepping down as a state committeeman since I was elected district leader in June, and I'm pleased that Landon Wickham, who's going to join us for just a second, is going to be stepping forward to fill my shoes for the rest of that term. Landon, if you would just step forward. It's been a pleasure serving as your state committee member, and I'm pleased that Landon is going to be able to step forward in leadership for the club and for the 6th and 9th Assembly District. Landon, if you want to just say hello.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm exhausted. I've been teaching all day, but I got to tell you, this is an amazing club, and this turnout and the questions that you asked these candidates were fantastic. Keep up the good work. I always appreciate seeing you all out on the street doing what you do. You're a great club. I'm glad I have this opportunity to work with you. You've been amazing all these years, both with what you do for the club, but also for my wife, Judge Stroth. I am married to Judge Stroth. You guys have supported her since day one, and I feel it's my duty to sort of like give back to a club and a community that has done a lot for me and my family. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I'll be honest with you, I literally, before I came here, printed out something off the web to try to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing. I promise you I will figure it out, and I will speak to other committee members who know what goes on. But again, thank you, and I hope I can do something positive for the community.
Thank you. Welcome. It'll be great to work with you. I'm Lynn Thomas, and on the female part of the state committee. We just have a few things. I work at the Board of Elections, and there's just a few things that are new, and we don't really need to talk about them tonight, actually, but before we start petitioning, it would be good for everyone to know the various things that are new with absentee voting. And I wanted to mention that we have a new administrative manager. His name is Mike Corbett. He worked for 3 city council people, and he was the president of the Young Democrats. And I just bring that up because, as you know, Cynthia's not there anymore. We don't have a Democrat and in that position. It's really very, very important to have 2 experienced people. So I just keep our fingers crossed. Dan was in his column talked about he was now on the ethics committee. Congratulations, for the county. And you probably know that what it was like with this big battle when we had the last county committee meeting. We had more people this year, but next year it would be great to have even more. There were 700 and so people at that meeting, and the difference between 2 people was, what, six votes or something? So I know that for the last 2 years, we haven't had check-ins, which we used to do, And so I think that's one of the ways to solve that big problem of not knowing, if people are kind of cheating, frankly. So that's really all I wanted to say. And we'll talk more next meeting about what to do for when we're doing petitioning. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm Dan's other half as district leader. And like Dan, I've been wearing a couple of hats. And I just wanted to let you know that in February, Josh Pepper will be taking over as the membership director, all right? So I'll be able to concentrate on being a district leader. So Josh is going to be a great membership director. He's done it before. He was membership director in 2005 and 6. He's also been club president. He's on the board. So I'm really excited about this. So, but for the meantime, I am still membership director, and I want to remind you all to pay your dues if you haven't yet. If you're interested in joining the club, we can help you. And also, please sign in, whether you're a member or a guest. We'd like to know who was here tonight. It's a great turnout, and we really appreciate it. And I think all of the candidates do too. It's been 20 years since we have had a change in the Assembly District, so this is very important to hear the candidates speak and to do your due diligence before we do the endorsement. So I just want to thank you all. And
thank you. Thank you, Teresa. So just to bring it home, thank you so much. This was great turnout. We had to bring in chairs multiple times because we couldn't give everybody a seat. And hopefully everybody had a chance to have a place to sit by the end of the evening. The next big thing is our, it's not our holiday party, but it's our New Year party. It's going to be on Sunday, the 21st, so just about 10 days away. It's going to be at Street Taco. It is free. From 3 to 5 o'clock on 103rd and Broadway. It used to be Mama Mexico, now it's Street Taco. 102nd. We look forward to seeing you all there, and thank you so much for coming. Have a great night.